All right, Mark, thank you for joining us on the set today. Super excited to have you. Some of the people listening may already know this, but you've been a good friend of mine and a business coach through the EOS system that you're a part of, and that's been super valuable to me and a practice here. Today, a lot of listeners might not know about the EOS Entrepreneurial Operating System and how there's the Visionary, the Integrator, and the Implementer, which you're an implementer.
Right.
So for those of listening for the first time, kind of from a high level, I'll tell you what I think it is,
Okay.
Mark, and maybe you can correct me. But in my way, the way I dumb it down is the visionary is kind of they're casting the vision, they're throwing out ideas. Some of them are good, some of them are terrible, but they're kind of setting the course of where the company's going. And of course, you have the integrator who's like a CEO, but even at a higher level, they're making it come that vision to life. And then of course, there's the implementer who a lot of companies who do the EOS use, which is somebody like yourself who helps guide them through this, whether it's the quarterly meetings, things of that nature. What am I leaving out there?
Yeah, so it's a pretty good description. So you've been listening. Good job, Glenn. So the visionary, they have all the ideas. They're thinking about the future. They're looking at where things are going, trying to figure out the best place to position the company along the path. They're sort of making it up, right, as we go. The integrator is the one that's then making it happen. They're making it real. They're making it execute and follow through. So they pay attention to the details. They're great at holding people accountable and kind of orchestrating across the team. And then the implementer, as you mentioned, is someone like me who comes in from the outside. They're from outside the organization. And in that role, I'm really doing three things. Number one, I'm teaching the EOS model and the structure and the tools.
Sure.
I'm facilitating. So, I don't give you all the answers to your business. You all know your business way better than I do. So I'll facilitate those discussions within the team to kind of get the answers out of you.
Sure.
And then I'm there to coach you when it gets tough, because it always gets tough, right? And so when you hit those walls, I've seen what's on the other side. So it's helpful to have somebody there that can kind of, cheer you on, help you push through and get what you're really after.
Makes sense. And I know later we'll talk a little bit about all the books. I mean, you co-authored a book called Rocket Fuel, which really dives into how a good integrator and a good visionary can work together. And recently you did an awesome book, The Visionary, which I got a ton out of, which I'm gonna love to hear your thoughts on what inspired you to write that.
Sure.
But how did you begin in this career? Like, how did you become, I'm going to call it a business coach and an author, and inspired to leave corporate world and to do this?
Yeah, so it's a long story. So I'll give you kind of the short version. We can kind of dive into wherever. But I began kind of on the traditional corporate track. I started out of college with Procter & Gamble. And back in the day, the mindset was you get on board with a good company and you're set.
Sure.
You perform, you grow up through the ranks there, and they're going to take care of you forever, and it's going to be great. And so that was true for a while, and I was a reasonably fast mover in that organization. But I started to feel the constraints, right, of being in a big corporation, and so I would kind of test boundaries and test limits. And one day I had having a dinner with my manager. And
At PG?
At P&G, yeah. And so it was a really weird thing. So I'll just go ahead and tell this story, because it sort of triggered it all. I was responsible for a large area of basically grocery stores, right? So we're selling consumer packaged goods through grocery stores. And back then, the approach was when you had senior executives come in, you sort of cleaned everything up. So it was all spotless and everything was perfect, so that when they came into the market, they're like, oh, this is great. And they pat the person on the head that's in charge of it and make them feel good. And then they fly away and go on to the next place. Well, at this point in time, we had some very real competitive issues going on that were really causing some problems. And it to me seemed like a bad idea to let them see some sort of an artificial reality that just was not the case.
Sure.
Seemed like we ought to let them see some of the real stuff that was going on. And so I'm sitting at a dinner with this guy, just me and him, just kind of like you and I are sitting here now. And I laid this idea out, and this guy leans across the table and he goes, Mark, he goes, don't F with me. And he points at me like that, and he didn't say F. He said the whole thing.
Yeah.
And he was furious.
Because it would make him look bad?
Oh, it would make him look terrible. He thought I was, trying to question his authority or whatever. And so I remember just kind of rocking back in my seat, and I was like, this guy literally has my career in his hands. And at the time, Glenn, I had it mapped out. So by the age of 43, I was going to be the CEO of Procter & Gamble. I had every move laid out. I knew exactly how old this guy was, who would be next, how long they'd be in the seat, and everything, right? And so my whole plan, now this guy, all of a sudden, he's going to be able to derail the whole thing. And so that felt terrible to me. And I just wasn't sure what to do about it. But I remember actually leaving that meeting, and I went by a bookstore. And so I'm walking the aisles of the bookstore in the business section. I'm looking for anything that says entrepreneur. And back then, there weren't a lot. I mean, there was Entrepreneur Magazine maybe, and there was, how to start a business, something like that. Sure. And I'm like, all right. And so I picked up something and go home, just kind of, that planted the seed for me, which then led to not too long later, I basically left. And it was another interesting dynamic where they'd offered me sort of a promotion, more responsibility, kind of a great opportunity. And I'm like, I think it's time for me to go. And so I left and went and started my own deal. I started working. I was in business school at the University of Chicago, and found a professor to kind of take me under his wing and go do some consulting. And so that was sort of my first taste of being out there doing stuff on my own. Got an idea, started a business, raised money. That led to another and another and another. And now looking back, we're at 15 different businesses that I either started myself, bought from somebody else. And some of those have worked out terrible, and some of those have worked out great, right? In all different industries. But that's sort of how I got into it, and that's sort of how I fell in love with the whole entrepreneurial roller coaster ride.
And I appreciate you sharing that. And so in businesses, right, there's a ton of different operating systems. Some are better than others. You've bought in, as well as our firm, GDS Wealth Management's bought into the EOS Entrepreneurial Operating System that sets a groundwork of how our company should operate. So you got into that field. You co-wrote with Gino Wickman, Rocket Fuel. Right. I was going to talk about the books later, but I think maybe to tee up a bunch of the questions I'm going to ask you. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about Rocket Fuel? Again, as I said earlier, this is how an integrator and a visionary can really work together. But from a high level, what made you want to write the book, co-write the book, and then what is the message of the book? If somebody wants a cliff note so they can maybe go and be inspired and go buy it themselves.
Sure. Let's kind of transition into that a little bit. So I go from being kind of serial entrepreneur guy to I sort of made the transition to become more advisory instead of an operator. Okay. And so working with other people on their companies instead of just always doing mine. So that's where I learned the value of having an operating system to run a business in the first place, because a lot of those, the first half of those or whatever, I didn't have one, and it was just seat of the pants and all over the place, and all the mistakes you can make, I made them. And then once I had an operating system that I used, it was better. And so as I started to coach people and teach people, I taught them the operating system that I used. And somewhere along that path is where I met Gino, and I learned about EOS. And I'm like, this is a better mousetrap. This is better than what I've been using. So I'm gonna start using this and teaching this to people. So it's funny looking back on it now. So that was like 14 years ago. And Gino's in Detroit, and he and I met up there. And then I came back to Dallas, and nobody knew what EOS was. There was nobody in the state of Texas that was implementing EOS like we talked about before. In fact, the closest person in the country was in Des Moines, Iowa. There were only a couple of dozen people on the planet that were doing it. Now we're getting close to 1,000, right? And it's literally everywhere. So it was a whole different world back then. But I started teaching people, and they loved it. And it just sort of took on a life of its own. And so I really kind of leaned into that and started spending a lot of time with it. Gino and I became fast friends. We had a lot of history in common and knew a lot of the same people. And so within about 6 months or so, he throws out this idea of, hey, thinking about writing a book on this Visionary-Integrator thing. Would you be interested? And so we had some discussions to kind of, sort that all out, and we agreed to do it. And there you go. So that was 11 years ago since Rocket Fuel came out. But leading up to that, we spent a good year and a half sort of living inside each other's brains, which is what you do when you co-author a book like that. And it sort of took on a life of its own. So rocket fuel was something that resonated with people. It sort of unpacked this whole visionary integrator structure in a way that people hadn't heard before. Yeah. We created what we call the 5 rules, which are all about how to take a visionary who's this idea person and an integrator who's this execution person. And if you think about them, they're wired very differently. And so the natural tendency is to sort of butt heads and there'd be a lot of friction. And so the idea behind the structure, the 5 rules, is how do we take that friction and we blend it into something positive and powerful that really is what's going to propel the company to the next level. So started a business off of that, a training business where we would, in addition to the EOS implementation work that was going on, we would work directly with visionaries and integrators to help them understand these roles and get better so that they could go back and make those relationships as powerful as they could be. The first place that we started was really with the integrator. Mm-hmm. Because we saw a lot of programming out there already for visionaries. There's CEO groups and all different kinds of things that are available that are pitching you all the time for CEO stuff, right? And so, but for the integrators, there just wasn't. There wasn't. People were just starting to understand that name and adopt it, and so there really wasn't good training. And what we found in writing the book Rocket Fuel was there's a very interesting ratio in the world of how many visionaries there are to how many integrators there are. So if you look at it, of course, everybody's not a visionary and integrator, but of the group that are one of those, the ratio is actually 4 to 1. So there are 4 visionaries in the world for every one that's naturally wired to be an integrator. And then you take that a step further, this one integrator isn't a great fit for all 4 of those visionaries. Yeah. They're a great fit for maybe 1 or 2 of them, right? So it really becomes a scarce resource that you're trying to identify. And so we're like, all right, how can we help that? How can we help integrators identify that that's what they are and then help them grow into the role where they can truly be great, where they can support these visionaries to help them go and make happen what this vision is that they see.
Makes sense. I mean, I remember I read the book. We used to live in the same neighborhood, and I read the book, and I didn't put 2 and 2 together when I met you that you're the same Mark Winter that wrote it. And for me, it's been a huge blessing. The EOS, the rocket fuel, just to grow a company. I don't know if I would say less stressful because it's still stressful, but to grow it in a way that things are less likely to fall through the cracks. There's organizational, there's accountability, which I know is a big word for you and for me. And I love that because you can't hide incompetencies or if people aren't doing their job, there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah, I tell people that if they're uncomfortable with accountability, they're going to hate EOS. Yeah. Because it sort of turns the lights on and we're going to see it and we're going to talk about it, right? And so that's a really important thing. And for the visionary, Glenn, and really that's who I love, that's who I care about, that's who I really want to help, is the visionary entrepreneur. And I see 2 traps that they fall into again and again, and I've done it, and maybe you felt some of this too, but the first one is, I call it the pit. And it's when the entrepreneur gets this entrepreneurial seizure and they're like, man, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to make tons of money. I'm going to have all kinds of flexibility in my time. I'm going to work with whoever I want. Yeah. I'm going to have a huge impact, right? And they have this vision of what it's going to be like, right? So they start off into it. Then you go away and you check back in on them about 18 months later and see how they're doing. And what you find is they're working harder than they ever have in their life. And if you were to convert that to like an hourly rate, they're making less money per hour than probably they ever have. They're having to work with some people they hate because they're stuck, and whether it's customers or clients or people on the team or whatever, they just kind of feel trapped in that. They don't feel like they're making a big difference and having an impact. Their time is just, all sucked up. So they don't have that freedom that they were after. And a lot of them, they never get out of that pit. A lot of them die there, right? Or they are stuck there forever. And so, with EOS and coming in and helping them, we're really trying to bring them up out of that pit into the daylight where you can see what's going on and go make it really happen. But then the other trap, which is one, unfortunately, a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about until it's too late. But I call it the empty end, right? Where you get to the end, and let's say you sell the company. Okay, now we've had this exit, so we've made a lot of money, but now who am I? Yeah. Because I'm not that guy anymore, right? And
your identity's gone.
Your identity's gone, and then you kind of look around you, and it's kind of like, well, okay, my wife left me. My kids hate me. My health sucks. Yeah. And here you are, And you worked and sacrificed and thought you were doing all the right things all along the way. And then when you get there, that's not what you wanted. That's not what you wanted at all. And so those two traps we can help with. There's things we can do to avoid those, prevent those, and work through those. And so that's really where it comes from.
That reminds me, I saw a cartoon, I'm not sure which one, who did it, but in essence it says, somebody's being asked, this business owner, what they do, and they said, well, I'm a business owner, so I work 80 hours a week to make less money than if I worked for XYZ Corporation.
Yeah, sounds about right. Sounds about right.
When a visionary unintentionally kind of screws up their company, and I'm sure you've seen millions of those. Yeah. What are a couple reasons that you think that happens?
Yeah. So one is, and the whole foundation of the Visionary Integrator model is, we're wired differently. Okay, so a visionary is wired differently than the integrator, but just because they're wired that way doesn't mean that they're not capable of doing these other things. And a lot of times when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, you have to do everything, right? You have to wear all the hats. Yep. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, we got to take care. We got to learn to be good at this, learn to be good at that, and you got to do all of it. And so you kind of get confused with, just because you can, maybe you should. And then the reality is, once we get into a healthy visionary integrator structure where you have this strong integrator alongside you that's driving the execution, that's making things happen, one of the common mistakes that a visionary will make is they'll get bored. They'll feel like, well, it doesn't feel like I'm doing much, so I better get involved. And they start to, what I call, tamper. And they start to change things around, and they start to, make decisions down here and give direction over there without kind of checking the plan and checking the path and fully understanding what's already in motion. And so that's a really easy mistake to make. And there's no bad intent there. Yeah. It's just an old habit. It's just the way that you always have done it. And so making that visible, what's really going on, and giving you a structure and a place to put that energy, drive really those things through the integrator, so the integrator can drive it through the rest of the leadership team, is a much more effective way in the organization. The organization, they're sort of on the other end of this, and they've got somebody telling them this, and now you, the visionary, comes in and starts telling them that. And now they're confused, right? And a lot of times we waste a lot of unnecessary motion when we do that. Another common one is just all the ideas keep coming and they never stop. And so at a certain point, you got to go, okay, that's a good idea, but the time isn't now, right? Yeah. And so we have a structure for sort of a container to put all that stuff in, so you don't lose it, because there could be pure gold in there, right? So we want to capture it and contain it, but then we want to have a place to kind of talk about it and sort through it and really decide, in the context of where we've agreed we're trying to go, what's next? What's the one that's really going to help us? What's the one we should tackle next, instead of trying to kind of tackle it all at once?
100%. I know in the U.S. those are the rocks, right?
Right.
That the company has and the individual people on leadership have. In terms of if somebody's listening out there and they're a business owner and they have maybe a COO, at what point should they be thinking, I know it's just a title, but transitioning from that role to more of an integrator, and what would those differences look like?
Yeah, so first, and you've heard me say this, I'm not a fan of titles because they create confusion, right? So, we've all worked at a bunch of different companies or with a bunch of different companies, and so we've heard, here's what a vice president title means. Well, what does it mean? It means a dozen different things. I'm confused by that. COO, general manager, president, chief of staff, all these different kinds of things, they start to get all garbled and confusing. And so, what we advocate is, look, let's just give it a label. So, visionary does this, integrator does that, sales leader does this, right? So we can kind of keep it simple, at least inside our house, so we're not confusing each other. If you need to use a fancy title externally to get a meeting with somebody, have at it. But inside our house, let's keep it simple. So from that perspective, the integrator, it could be the same as the COO, right? It's just kind of changing that label and then creating the awareness that it's about more than just operations. It's about truly integration, right? So we've got a sales and marketing function. We've got whatever different kinds of operations or service delivery functions we have. We've got our finance function, our HR function, whatever that looks like. And so the integrator's got to be able to harmoniously work through and between all those different functions, right? And pull them all together, make sure we're in alignment, make sure we're not, fighting and getting stuck, making sure we're not working at odds with each other, and then following through. So the timing for that, it's funny. it becomes important as soon as we start to form that leadership team. So think about the transition from the founder entrepreneur that's kind of doing it all
By
themselves,
themselves, doing every role.
right? Doing it all, and then maybe they got one other person that's kind of helping them.
Yeah.
Right, so it's you and Robert or whatever, right? And we're doing things, and then you kind of start to grow past that. It's kind of like, we're becoming a real company now. We need to add some structure so that we can, scale and really grow. And so when you start to form that true leadership team is when a lot of times that integrator role starts to show up and make some sense.
Speaking of leadership teams, I mean, there's no leadership team that starts day one and they're world class. There's bumps along the way, good hires, bad hires, and people learning as they go. Where do you see leadership teams in general? I know I'm giving you a very vague question here, but at what point or in what areas do you see a leadership team break down?
Well,
or what are the causes for that
there's a
breakdown?
lot. Okay, so the first one I'm going to give you is accountability, which we talked about before, where if they don't actually embrace accountability, they're going to struggle because stuff's not going to happen and people are going to get frustrated and things are going to get missed and all of that kind of stuff. Another one is clear ownership. So one of the tools we use is the accountability chart, right? And so the accountability chart, think of it like an org chart on steroids, because what we do is it's not about titles and levels. It's just about clear groupings of ownership. Here's the stuff. Here's the cluster of things that we need this person to own and be accountable for, right? And they need to be great at this stuff, right? And then there's going to be one person that they're going to be accountable to for that. And so having that clarity on what it is, who owns it, and who they're accountable to solves so many problems, right? Many times we'll be in a leadership team meeting and there'll be some issue that's just kind of bouncing around. It's just kind of floating. It doesn't seem to be landing anywhere. And I'll ask the question, okay, who owns X? And then they'll kind of look at each other and they won't know.
Or multiple people.
Or
right?
two people go, yeah, right, two hands.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? So the lack of clear ownership is another one. And then the third one I would give you that's really common is, I'll call it honesty. And what I mean by that is it's being able to see and say the hard thing. So we might have a leadership team and we're all running fast as we can. And we got some pretty good people on this leadership team and we can run pretty fast, except for this one. And there's the person in this seat and they just can't run as fast as the rest of us. And so ultimately, the team is going to run as fast as its slowest horse. And so we're all held back because we have to keep going and helping this one person, right? And so being able to see that and name it and call it out and address it. It's not that they're a bad person, but we're stewards of the business. We got to do what the business needs, and we may need to have a different person in that particular seat.
And I think it's about not avoiding confrontation, right?
100%.
I think a lot of people that's a big deal. As you know, I don't mind confrontation.
You
If
love
I see
it.
something,
I love it.
It's the only way to improve.
Yeah.
As firms grow, I mean, I could say from 10 million in revenue to 20 to 50 to 100 or whatever, but those medium-sized businesses, not a startup and not a public company. Do you see transitions or growing pains at, I'm going to call it 20 million in revenue, a hiccup that's common?
So it's funny. We describe our target market for EOS businesses as between 10 and 250 employees. Okay. And the reason that we say that is, one, we got a lot of data that shows that it works really well in that size range. Okay. So we know it works. The reason it's 10 on the low end is because that's usually when somebody's actually kind of putting together that leadership team that we were talking about, right? And on the high end, I've got clients that are thousands of employees. I've got buddies that have clients that are tens of thousands of employees, and it works great. The difference is, as you get bigger, you got to stay hungry for that accountability. If you ever start to get, bureaucratic and some of the things that we see and that, well, we're a big company now, we have to do it differently. Watch out.
Beginning of the end.
It can be, right? And so you got to stay hungry for and really kind of enjoy that healthy confrontation, right? And what goes with it in the spirit of accountability and clarity, just trying to understand what's actually going on so we can deal with it and do something about it. But the transitions that I see along the path, Glenn, so one is, that the composition of that leadership team. So one of the things that I urge leaders to do is to simplify, 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 because the organization is creating tons of complexity on its own. So one of the ways we can simplify, or one of the areas, is in the actual structure of the business. So the simplest structure after we have the visionary and the integrator is to have, a sales and marketing function, an ops function, and kind of a finance and admin function. So, and that's it. But every business has different unique needs, and maybe we need to have the HR function split out, or maybe there's sales and marketing need to be two different things, or maybe there's a couple of different versions of ops, whatever it is. And so we want to be specific to the company, but we want to balance that against, let's don't get crazy here and make it more complex than it should be. And so what I see in teams as they grow, it's sort of counterintuitive. And this is anecdotal data based on Mark's experience. But as they get bigger, I actually see smaller teams kind of have more different kinds of seats on the leadership team. And then as they grow, those things often start to collapse together. Where, let's say you had a couple of different operational units, you might collapse those under a single ops leader that would have both of those leaders then reporting to them.
So maybe what I think I'm hearing you say, the bigger the company, sometimes it's less people on the leadership, which is counterintuitive, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. And my explanation for that, and what I see is, in the beginning, you can't afford that person that can kind of get their arm around all that. You certainly can't afford three of those people,
True.
Right? So you can't afford this one plus this one plus this one. And maybe this one is so expensive because of their experience and expertise that you're just not ready for them yet. So you have sort of more specialists, right? And then you start to kind of be able to bring that together. But I see companies that grow that have, let's say they have some kind of a regional footprint where they have managers over a group in a region, and then they have open another region, and that starts to get wide. So when it gets too wide, we can just collapse that down, right? And it's the same kind of thing. And people have a natural span of control of how much they can manage, how many people they can manage, and 5 to 7 is kind of the limit, even if you're great. I don't see very many people, if any, that can effectively truly manage more people than that.
If someone's thinking of hiring an integrator, what are the couple traits, or how do they go about that, do you think? Traits they're looking into that integrator for?
So really, really good question. So I'm going to talk about this in a couple places. I talk about it, I have a kind of a 7-step process in Rocket Fuel. And then in Visionary, we talk about a 3-piece puzzle. Okay, so listen to this. So we think about the visionary and the integrator as 2 pieces that we want to fit together. So, there's certain things that each are good at, strong at, and we want those to be complementary, meaning there's not a lot of gaps in the relationship, things that are completely missing, and there's not a lot of overlap where we're both strong at or really like.
You have the test in the book, Crystallizer, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the Crystallizer assessment helps you sort that out, and then we can take that a step further to look at the gaps and overlap of that relationship. But that helps you understand how this particular integrator is going to fit with this particular visionary. And then the other side of the puzzle is the business. And so we take that visionary and integrator and we map them up alongside the business. And the question for both of them is, okay, how much visionary does this business really need? Which is a function of complexity, the ambition that the ownership has for it. What are we really trying to do here? How many moving parts are there? How many people? How many markets? How many product lines? All that kind of stuff. And same thing for the integrator. So how much integrator does this business really need? And there's some businesses that are super simple, and they're small, and they're not really growing that much. And so they need an integrator that's probably more like a project manager, right? And then think about a complex business that's on the total other end of the spectrum. Think about like a SpaceX or something like that, where it's way out there, super long planning horizons. It's beyond global, right? Yeah. And it's just all the different moving parts that you've got going on. They need a completely different integrator than somebody that's in a drywall business or temporary storage. And so that's what we try to understand. And so I tell visionaries that are trying to fill that missing seat of an integrator, okay, you got to do the work to understand yourself. You need to understand your profile, understand that crystallizer assessment, understand what you're really looking for in the relationship so you find somebody who's going to be a good fit for you. Complementary fit, it's an important note. You don't need somebody else like you.
Yeah, drive each other crazy.
You absolutely will. And that's who you're going to want to hire because you like to talk to them, right? Yeah. So that's a big watch out for visionaries. And then you look for how that integrator seat needs to fit with the business. And if you spend the time to define those, you really sort of define what that missing puzzle piece looks like. And once you know that, you've got a couple of different options. You can use a recruiter. You can go tell them. There's recruiters that have started to specialize in hiring that specific integrator seat, which was kind of fun to watch begin to happen. And then you can also just kind of put the word out in your own professional network and say, hey, I'm looking for somebody that looks like this. Who do you know? Who should I talk to?
Are there red flags when you hear of a couple, a visionary and integrator that's not working out, or you hear
a duo,
somebody that this is an integrator that I've interviewed? Is there any words that you look for, like, that's probably not going to work out?
Yeah. So there's nothing coming to mind for me on that. So because it's so different. There are lots of them, but you sort of have to hear them in context.
Okay.
What you're looking for is somebody who, it was easy for me to work with them. We communicated extremely well. We stayed on the same page, so I felt like we were able to get on the same wavelength and stay on the same wavelength. They drove execution and accountability relentlessly, right, and really made it happen. I heard one visionary describe his integrator as be careful which hill you point him at, because he will take it. Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And so, it ended up being a little issue for them because he sort of accidentally pointed him at a hill, and then he kind of changed his mind. He didn't really want to take it, but the integrator's halfway up the hill. Right. So, there's a lot of things like that you can learn, but it all depends on, again, what that shape is that you're looking for, whether it's a good fit with that or not.
We talked about harder conversations. Is there any best practices if an integrator or visionary, I guess, or somebody on the leadership team, they're having a difficult conversation with each other, or somebody that reports to them, of how do you have that honest, I would say, confrontational conversation without making it personal? I guess, or maybe that's the answer to the question. Try not to make it personal and give facts.
Yeah. So a couple of things. So one is just don't wait. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. Second thing is don't make it personal. So if you and I have something, it's not about me, coming at you. It's about trying to see and name the thing.
Yeah.
Right. So here's what it is, Glenn. And so and imagine we're now laying it on the table, this thing that we're talking about. And now you and I are joining forces to try to solve the puzzle that's now on the table. Yeah. That's the key, to try to get to solving that hard stuff.
And how do they balance a visionary and integrator growth? So say, not only my experience, but reading books, whether it's the Visionary, the Rocket Fuel, and other books and businesses, a lot of times you have the push on the pull. You got the visionary that's grow. For the most part, different visionaries are different, but most are, they enjoy the growth cycle. And then you got the integrator, who a lot of times wants to make sure everything's measured 15 times when for some visionaries measured twice. That's good enough. Now you don't need to go 15 times. So how do they find a balance of the right growth without driving each other and staff crazy?
Yeah, so that's exactly the tension we want to create.
Okay.
Right. There's a healthy level there.
Tension.
It's a very healthy tension, right? Because without either one of them, we're less than.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got to have that growth energy that is typically driven by the visionary, but we've got to have that actually be able to finish it and execute it and stay focused and follow through, and all that energy, which typically is coming from the integrator, and then we got to hash it out, right? And so sometimes it's going to feel not natural to you and not like exactly what you want or what you think you want. And so it's about getting all of that context on the table. And a lot of times the key for the integrator that's telling the visionary no, they're not really telling them no. They're telling them not yet. They're telling them, yes, if we want to change a prioritization thing here or whatever, but they're sort of bringing the rest of the consequences that go with that decision if we were to make this pivot or whatever, which a lot of times the visionary, man, they're just moving so fast down the road. They're not seeing that. They just see this thing right in front of them, and they want to go get it.
Yeah. Thinking of visionaries and founders, what's something that sometimes is hard for them to give up of the reins of for a founder that is hurting themselves, but because they've been doing that to get them to that place, although that place doing that won't get them to where they want to go long term.
Yeah. So let's talk about what's under that first, and then I'll tell you where I see it show up. So underneath that is something in their history where they had a thing that they built, got started, whatever, and they took some portion of it and they handed it off to somebody else and said, here, you run this, you take care of this, you do this for me. And then they stepped away for a bit, and sort of watched from afar as that person they handed it to sort of dropped it on the ground and it shattered into a million pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, that's my baby, you know, and you run over and you pick it all back up and you put it all back together and you're like, get away from me. And it's
Easier to do it myself.
Easier to do it myself, right? And so scar.
Yeah.
And then you do it again with something else, different version, scar. And so you look under a Visionary shirt and they're just covered with these scars over time of hoping that someone else would be able to take care of it for them. They failed, and then it made them afraid. So it's about trust. And so what I tell people is, look, you know, for the integrator role particularly, or really anybody that's the receiver of a delegation, you got to earn that trust. And so that means you got to take stuff, you got to deliver, you got to show that you can follow through, you got to make sure that you understand what the expectations are and what good looks like, what done looks like on something like that. But then from our perspective, from the visionary seat, or really anybody that's delegating, you got to be sure that you're communicating that stuff as well. You got to make sure that you're creating crystal clear expectations for what needs to happen with this thing. And then you don't just walk away and leave, but you stay close by and you answer questions and you give feedback until you see, okay, this is something, they've got this, they can do this. And so it's a process. You know, trust is one of those things that, how long does it take to build it?
Takes a while.
A long time. Yeah. How long does it take to destroy it?
2 seconds.
Blink of an eye, right? So that's the thing, is do the work to make sure that we've got that foundation of trust. That's what sort of becomes the unlock to be able to hand off more stuff, because you've experienced this, I know. You have people you trust. And when you have someone you trust and you hand them something and they do well with it, it's like, ooh, that feels good. And you give them more, and you give them more, and you give them more. So that's what we're trying to do, is build that muscle on a foundation of trust. Now, the areas where I see visionaries struggle to let go most often, one is the money. So they've been burned there somehow, and so they
finance, or what do you mean?
Yeah,
like
think the finance function.
Okay.
So there's something that they know there that is unique to them, just because again they have so much deep history in the business, or somebody's embezzled from them or something, right? So they've been burned, and so they're really slow to let go of things over there. Another one is sales, and one of the things that I see there is it's like, well, my name's on the door, you know, they got to talk to me. And so that's fine and that's true when you're starting out, but when your business starts to reach a certain size, it's just not scalable.
That's a limiting factor.
You become a built-in limit to the growth of the organization. And so the first step is to be able to kind of get out of the day-to-day sales stuff. It doesn't mean that you don't talk to people. It doesn't mean that you're not there every once in a while or whatever, but you change the interaction of the role to where it's not managing the sales function, it's being a resource to come in and support that. Same thing with client relationships.
You know, we have a lot of business owners who are our clients, and I know I've referred a lot to the EOS, giving them the book. Some of them I know you've met.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if I ever gave you an update, but about a year ago, I asked you for somebody that spoke Spanish. I was in South America. My brother's a missionary and has a mega church.
Yeah.
And you recommended somebody. I had him record the call. I'm like, I'm gonna see if he does the EOS the right way. I mean, I can smell BS. He did amazing.
Oh, good.
And he flies down there once a quarter. And my brother, who's been doing it for decades as a missionary and having a mega church, he said it's helped him tremendously for the accountability. There was room for optimization, so it added a ton of value. To that end, what in your mind is the biggest ROI for people if they do the EOS? What's the biggest ROI, would you say?
Yeah, so the ROI is being able to actually execute the plan.
Okay.
So whatever that is, that's gonna the things won't just stay stuck and.
Or I think I asked the question poorly.
Okay.
What gives the biggest ROI is what I meant to ask.
Yeah.
Not what is that. Of course, you don't know.
So let me say that a couple of ways. So first, high level. Okay. So the way we describe, what EOS is all about is to give you three things, and you've heard me say this 1,000 times, but we give you three things we call vision, traction, and healthy, where vision means you truly are crystal clear on where you're trying to go and how you're going to get there. And ultimately, everybody in the organization, side to side, top to bottom, gets 100% on the same page about what that looks like, right? Traction means that every day when we wake up and we step off into the real world, this real world that we see begins to look more and more like this place we said we wanted to go. So it feels like we're getting closer. That feels like progress. That progress gives us more confidence, and that confidence gives us more energy to tackle all the stuff we got to tackle along the way. And then finally, healthy is about the team. So we're sitting there working together as a team. We're kind of looking across the room into the eyes of the folks that are on this team with us. We should feel like, you know what? We really do have the right folks here to do the stuff that we need to get done. And there's nothing we can't talk about. It's all just stuff. We're not afraid to bring things up. So we bring it up, we put it on the table, and we talk it through and figure out how to use that stuff to get us closer to this place that we all said we wanted to go. Okay, so that's what EOS does for you. Now, the puzzle, it's different for every company, but boy, people is a common theme. It's in everybody's journey and everybody's experience is people. And whether it's they've got a bunch of people that just don't fit their core values and are kind of infecting everybody else in an unhealthy way, or they just don't have people that actually, we call it GWC, wants it, have the capacity, the capability set to perform the role and do what we need done there. We just don't have the right people in the right seats to do all that yet. And so early on in the process, we give you a tool to help you sort of audit and make an assessment of here's where our organization is. We got 50 people and, 40 of them fit our core values and they're a good fit for their seat. 10 of them aren't. And, a couple of those, they're close. And so we might be able to work with them and kind of bring them along and make it clear. Again, our job is crystal clear expectations. But those other 8, they're pretty far off the reservation and nobody has told them.
Yeah.
And somebody's been afraid to talk to them about it or whatever. So we just been sort of kicking the can down the road. And so you start dealing with those things and it's a huge unlock. It creates so much capacity in the organization. Everybody feels better. You deal with somebody that's just a cancer in the bullpen and you finally deal with it and everybody else is like,
yeah,
why'd you wait so long?
Yeah.
So people.
I've lived that. You wrote Rocket Fuel, and to be honest, when you mentioned in passing you're writing a Visionary, I was like, man, I wonder what's left out because this breaks it down. You did a great job on the first one. What inspired you to? What did you see Visionaries doing wrong, and what inspired you to write that? And tell us a little bit about the Visionary, what it's about.
Good question. So the origin story of the Visionary book is as I mentioned, we started after Rocket Fuel working with integrators to help identify and train integrators to be truly great. Here's what it looks like. Here's where your gaps are. Here's what you need to do to get better. And so I was delivering those courses in the beginning. And so I spent a lot of time with these people. And it was funny. They loved it. And then I started getting questions like, well, do you have something like this for my Visionary? And I'm like, no. And then the question kept coming up. It kept coming up. I'm like, maybe that's an idea. Maybe we need to do that, to kind of help them understand their side of the relationship. And so I finally sat down and it actually came pretty fast. I created the 10 pillars of visionary greatness, I call it. And I gave a talk on this to a room full of visionaries at one of these EOS conferences about 3 years ago, I think. And they loved it. So it was well received. So I'm like, okay, there's something here. So I developed a class based on that and started doing some workshops on that. And they loved it enough that I'm like, all right, we need to put this all in a book. And so that's where the book came from.
Yeah, I mean, lots of things jumped out at me. One is, the Visionary becoming a bottleneck, obviously, right? And not realizing it. It's just businesses are living, breathing things. And if you're not self-aware or you don't have a coach, or if you don't read a book that enlightens that, you're going to keep repeating the same mistakes.
Yeah, the bottleneck thing is real, and it's so easy to have it happen and not even realize it. But when everything's got to come through you, right? Every decision, every action, every relationship, whatever, then by definition you're a constraint to the growth of the system. And it doesn't mean that you don't drive what you feel and know there into the organization. Absolutely, we got to do that. We got to institutionalize all that knowledge and expertise, and so other people can do that, and we get the same thing through someone else that we would have got if it went through you.
If you could fix one thing in terms of how a business operates, what would that one thing be? Something jump out at you?
One thing.
In terms of how the business leadership operates. I left out the leadership part, sorry.
I'll say it this way. Just say it.
Yeah.
Stop dancing. Everybody's got some degree of tippy toe right? And they're reluctant to just say it. And particularly a leadership team spends a lot of time together, and you work hard, and so you begin to know a lot about each other. And so we want that relationship to be one that really just lets it fly. And it's, I know you well enough. I know I love you. And when I tell you this thing that's going to hurt you, it's going to hurt me too. And that's why I'm going to tell you, because I love you. It's the truth with love, and just say it, and that's okay, sense. And we'll figure it out.
This has been great, Mark. As we wrap up, if I would ask you if you can share a couple things. One is if somebody, a business owner, thinks they're a bottleneck out there, what's the first step they should do, and any parting thoughts you have for everybody listening that would be valuable for them? Yeah,
so I mean, if you're a bottleneck, that's the first step is looking in the mirror and realizing that you're doing that.
Admit it.
And admit it, right? It's 12 steps.
Should be like a double Alcoholics Anonymous,
exactly.
Bottleneck Anonymous.
Visionaries Anonymous. But yeah, that's it. And a lot of times it's just, again, it's these things that we do unconsciously. Don't even realize it. It's just old habits, but they're having these unintended consequences that aren't helpful. And so just seeing it and then being able to say, okay, I'm doing that. And so here's one thing that I can change, and just picking one thing. And sometimes it's as simple as that. One thing per quarter that gets you better. One thing per quarter. And believe it or not, those start to stack up really, really quick.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one of our core values here, Kaizen, right? Constant improvement. All right, Mark, we're going to wrap up now with the rapid fire here. One-word answers if you can. We got 10 of them. You ready?
Ready.
All right. Regret.
Not finishing my Eagle Scout.
Failure.
Oof. Business going down.
Misconception.
That stuff I hate, other people love.
Bottleneck.
Common problem.
Turning point.
Digging back out of the ashes.
Hire.
Hire?
Yeah, I like hiring somebody. H-I-R-E.
Do it slowly.
Fire.
Do it quickly.
Sound like Jack Welch.
Yeah.
Burnout.
Common visionary problem, arguably epidemic.
Leverage.
Is your friend.
Legacy.
Think about it.
That's the answer? Think about it? Okay. Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate it.
Excellent.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. If you enjoyed this, learning from one of the best leaders and entrepreneur in the United States, I recommend checking out his books, Rocket Fuel and Visionary. And please share this with anybody who is a business owner, whether they're just starting out or they're already have a successful firm and they want to scale up to the next level. Thank you for joining us.